Listen, right at this exact second, something's happening in your brain that's quietly writing the script of your entire future. And no, I'm not talking about your college degree, where you grew up, or how much money is sitting in your bank account. I'm not even talking about your DNA, what your parents did for a living, or that time you totally bombed that presentation 3 years ago. What I'm about to share with you goes way deeper than any of that surface-level stuff. And honestly, most people go their whole lives without ever catching on to it. Inside your head, right now, there's this never-ending river of thoughts. Thousands and thousands of them, flowing through your mind every single day. Most folks treat these thoughts like background music in a coffee shop, just noise that's always there, but doesn't really mean much. But here's where things get wild. What if those thoughts aren't just random static? What if I told you they're literally building your world, rewiring the circuits in your brain, and deciding exactly who you're going to become? Here's the truth bomb. You don't just think thoughts. Your thoughts think you. They're quietly programming the deepest parts of your mind, creating your beliefs about yourself and everything around you, and basically constructing the exact life you're living right now. This isn't some feel-good motivational speech. This is hardcore brain science. This is the real deal about how your mind actually operates and how you form your sense of self. Every single thought that crosses your mind is carving deeper grooves into your neural pathways. Every belief you carry around is acting like a filter, deciding what you notice and what you ignore in the world. Every mental loop you run on repeat is becoming more automatic, more natural, until one day it just becomes you. You're literally transforming into what you think about, whether you're paying attention or not. Most people are unconsciously coding themselves for staying stuck, for constant struggle, for just getting by. They're recycling the same old thoughts they've been thinking forever, strengthening the same tired beliefs they've always held, and then scratching their heads wondering why nothing ever shifts. But you're about to stumble on to the most powerful secret of being human. When you transform your thoughts, you transform your brain. When you transform your brain, you transform your existence. When you transform your existence, you become a completely different human being. This isn't about crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. This is about getting real with how your mind actually manufactures your reality, and then grabbing the steering wheel of that process. You're about to learn how to become the master builder of your own evolution. Chapter 1: The Invisible Blueprint of Everything. Have you ever sat there wondering why some people just seem to magnetically pull success toward them, while others grind themselves to dust, working twice as hard and still can't catch a break? Why certain folks just radiate this natural confidence, while others are constantly wrestling with voices in their heads telling them they're not enough? Why some people cruise through life with crystal clear direction, while others feel like they're wandering in fog? The answer isn't what you think. It's not luck. It's not some special gift you're born with. And it's definitely not about who had it easier growing up. It's about something way more fundamental. It's about the invisible blueprint of thought that's operating underneath everything you're aware of. Right now, as these words are reaching your ears, there's this unseen force that's shaping every single piece of your experience. This force determines what catches your eye, what you think is actually possible for you, how you make sense of what happens to you, and ultimately who you become. This force is your thought patterns. But I'm not just talking about the thoughts you're thinking. I'm talking about the deeper machinery, the autopilot programs running in the background of your consciousness, constantly molding your reality while you're completely oblivious. Think about it for a second. Every day, you're swimming in an ocean of millions of tiny pieces of information, sounds, images, conversations people are having around you, chances to do something new, problems to solve. But your conscious mind can only grab hold of a tiny sliver of all that. The rest gets screened out by your subconscious mind, which works like this incredibly sophisticated bouncer, deciding what gets your attention and what gets tossed aside. But here's the part that changes everything. This screening system isn't fair or neutral. It's not randomly picking what to show you like some kind of mental lottery. Instead, it's running based on your existing thought patterns and beliefs. If your thoughts and beliefs are tuned to problems, your mind will spotlight more problems for you to see. If your thoughts and beliefs are scanning for possibilities, your mind will light up opportunities that other people walk right past without noticing. This is exactly why two people can walk down the exact same street on the exact same afternoon and have totally different experiences. One person whose mind is wired with thoughts of lack and limits will notice the closed storefronts, the backed up traffic, and the stressed out faces. Another person whose mind is wired with thoughts of plenty and potential will notice the new cafe opening up, the interesting stranger who smiled at them, and the "Help Wanted" sign in the window. Same street, same day, completely different universes. Your thoughts aren't just little events happening inside your skull. They're the invisible architects drawing up the blueprints of your reality. Every thought you have is like casting a vote for the kind of person you're choosing to be. Every mental pattern you strengthen is like laying down another brick in the foundation of who you are. Over time, all these thoughts pile up and harden into beliefs. And these beliefs become the glasses through which you see yourself and the entire world around you. But here's what most people totally miss. This whole process is happening whether you realize it or not. Whether you're actively picking your thoughts or just letting them run wild on autopilot, they're still constructing your reality. The real question isn't whether your thoughts are creating your life. The real question is, are you going to consciously take control of this process, or are you going to let it happen by accident? Most people are living their entire lives on mental cruise control. They wake up and immediately start replaying the same thoughts they had yesterday. They rewind the same worries, the same doubts, the same mental tracks. They reinforce the same beliefs about themselves and what they can't do. And then they wonder why their life looks exactly the same, month after month, year after year. But What if you could interrupt this cycle? What if you could become aware of the thoughts that are shaping your reality and deliberately choose new ones? What if you could reprogram your mind to scan for success instead of setbacks, for possibilities instead of problems, for growth instead of staying stuck? This isn't just possible, it's inevitable once you understand how your mind truly works. Your brain isn't locked in place. It's not carved in stone. It's constantly evolving, constantly rewiring itself based on what you think about and what you experience. Scientists call this neuroplasticity, and it's the reason transformation is always, always on the table. No matter how stuck you feel in this moment, the thoughts you're choosing today are literally rewiring your brain for tomorrow. The mental patterns you practice are getting stronger and more automatic. The identity you hold in your mind is becoming your actual lived experience. This is the invisible blueprint of your life. And once you see it, everything shifts. But first, you need to understand how deep this programming really goes. You need to see that the thoughts you think are your own might not actually be yours at all. They might be inherited patterns that got installed in your mind long before you had any ability to question them. Chapter 2: The Software You Never Installed. Right now, as you're absorbing this, there are programs running in your mind that you never consciously chose. These programs are deciding how you view yourself, what you believe is actually achievable in your life, and how you react when challenges or opportunities show up. They're shaping your feelings, your choices, and your actions in ways you're not even remotely aware of. These programs weren't written by you. They were downloaded into your mind by your surroundings, your experiences, and the people who were around you way before you had the mental tools to question whether any of it was actually true or helpful. And most people spend their entire existence being controlled by these inherited programs, never realizing they've got the power to rewrite the whole thing. Think about a smartphone for a second. When you get a new phone, it comes loaded with pre-installed apps. Some of these apps are genuinely useful and make your life easier. But some might be outdated, glitchy, or completely useless. The difference is, with a phone, you can easily see what apps are running and choose to delete the ones you don't want. But with your mind, these programs are invisible, running silently in the background, influencing everything you do without you even knowing they exist. From the moment you came into this world, your mind started soaking up information about how reality works. As a little kid, your brain was in this state of total openness, absorbing everything around you like a sponge in water. You didn't just absorb the words people said to you. You absorbed their emotions, their beliefs, their attitudes, and their limitations. You absorbed the energy of your environment, the spoken and unspoken rules about what was achievable and what wasn't. If you grew up hearing things like, "We can't afford that," or "Life's a grind," or "Don't set yourself up for disappointment," your young mind soaked those up as absolute facts about how the world works. If you were told, "You're not naturally smart," or "You're too emotional," or "You're not coordinated," these statements became woven into your self-image, whether they were actually accurate or not. But it wasn't just the direct messages that programmed you. It was also what you witnessed. If you saw the grown-ups around you constantly stressed about money, your subconscious absorbed the program that money is hard to come by. If you watched conflict and tension in relationships around you, you absorbed patterns about how love works. If you saw people playing it safe, ducking risks, and settling for less than they truly wanted, you absorbed those patterns too. By the time you hit adulthood, your subconscious mind had been packed with thousands of these inherited programs. Some of them genuinely serve you well, but many of them are limitations that don't belong to you at all. They're not based on what you're actually capable of or your real potential. They're based on the experiences, fears, and limitations of other people. The problem is, most people never question these programs. They assume the way they think and feel about themselves is just their natural personality. They believe their fears, their doubts, and their perceived limitations are simply who they are. They don't realize these are learned patterns that can be unlearned and swapped out for something better. Here's a perfect example. Tons of people have this deep, unconscious fear of actually succeeding. This might sound bizarre because consciously everyone says they want success. But subconsciously, they might have absorbed messages that success is risky, that it makes you arrogant, that it creates distance between you and the people you love, or that they don't deserve it. These subconscious programs will sabotage their efforts every single time they get close to breaking through to something significant. Or think about the program around self-worth. Many people carry an unconscious belief that they need to earn love and approval through achievement, being perfect, or constantly pleasing others. This program pushes them to work themselves into exhaustion, never feeling like they're enough, always hunting for validation from outside themselves. They don't realize this desperate need for approval isn't their natural state. It's a program that got installed when they were young and vulnerable. The most sneaky part of these inherited programs is that they feel completely true. They feel like your own thoughts and beliefs because you've been running them for so long. But the reality is, many of your deepest beliefs about yourself and your life weren't chosen by you. They were absorbed from your environment before you had the wisdom to evaluate them. This is why just thinking positive thoughts doesn't work for most people. You can't just slap positive thoughts on top of negative programming and expect real change. It's like trying to run brand new software on an operating system that's corrupted. The new software will keep crashing because the underlying system doesn't support it. Real transformation requires going deeper. It requires identifying these inherited programs, questioning whether they're actually valid, and consciously choosing to install new ones that truly serve your highest potential. It requires recognizing that you are not your programming. You are the awareness that can observe your programming and choose to change it. The beautiful truth is that every single program in your mind can be rewritten. The same neuroplasticity that allowed these patterns to get installed in the first place can be used to create completely new patterns. You can literally rewire your brain to support the life you actually want instead of the life your conditioning thinks you deserve. But first, you need to become aware of what's running in the background. You need to start catching these automatic thoughts and questioning where they originated. You need to ask yourself, is this thought actually true? Is this belief serving me? Is this pattern moving me toward my goals or pulling me away from them? Most importantly, you need to realize you have a choice. You are not doomed to live with the programming you inherited. You are not stuck with the thoughts and beliefs that were installed before you knew any better. You have the power to become the programmer of your own consciousness. Chapter 3: The Science of Mental Evolution. What I'm about to share will fundamentally change how you see your own capacity for transformation. For decades, scientists believed the human brain was basically fixed after a certain age. They thought once you became an adult, your neural pathways were set in concrete, and real change was impossible. This belief kept millions of people trapped in patterns they thought they could never escape. But then neuroscientists made one of the most revolutionary discoveries in the history of brain research: neuroplasticity. They discovered the human brain isn't fixed at all. It's constantly changing, constantly rewiring itself, constantly creating new neural pathways based on your thoughts, experiences, and behaviors. This discovery didn't just change neuroscience, it changed everything we know about what humans are capable of becoming. Your brain isn't like a computer with hardware that can't be modified. It's more like a living garden that's constantly growing, changing, and adapting based on what you plant and how you care for it. Every single thought you think is like dropping a seed in soil. Every mental pattern you repeat is like watering that seed. Over time, these thoughts grow into beliefs. These beliefs shape your emotions, and these emotions drive your actions. But here's the most important part. This process is happening all the time. Whether you're conscious of it or not, right now, as you're hearing these words, your brain is literally changing. New neural connections are forming. Existing pathways are being strengthened or weakened based on where you're putting your attention and what you're choosing to think about. This means transformation isn't just possible, it's inevitable. You cannot think the same thoughts without your brain becoming better at thinking those thoughts. You cannot repeat the same mental patterns without those patterns becoming more automatic. The question isn't whether your brain will change. The question is, will it change in the direction you want, or will it change by default? Let me explain exactly how this works. Every thought you think creates a specific pattern of electrical activity in your brain. When you think the same thought repeatedly, the neural pathways connected to that thought become stronger and more established. It's like walking through a meadow. The first time you cross the meadow, you have to push through tall grass and weeds. But if you walk the same path every day, eventually you create a clear, easy-to-follow trail. Your thoughts work exactly the same way. The first time you think a new thought, it takes effort and conscious intention. But the more you think that thought, the easier it becomes, until eventually it's completely automatic. This is why changing your thinking patterns can feel hard at first. You're literally forging new neural pathways while the old ones are still there, still strong, still trying to pull you back into familiar territory. But here's the incredible part. The brain is remarkably efficient at rewiring itself when you know how to work with it instead of against it. The key is understanding the three fundamental principles of neuroplasticity: repetition, emotional intensity, and focused attention. Repetition is the bedrock of all neural rewiring. Your brain strengthens whatever you practice most often. If you practice thinking thoughts of limitation and fear, you get better at limitation and fear. If you practice thinking thoughts of possibility and confidence, you get better at possibility and confidence. It's that straightforward and that powerful. But repetition alone isn't enough. The second principle is emotional intensity. Your brain pays special attention to experiences that carry emotional weight. This is why traumatic experiences can create instant, long-lasting changes in your thinking patterns, while neutral experiences often have minimal impact. The good news is you can use this principle deliberately. When you combine new thoughts with positive emotions like excitement, gratitude, or determination, your brain rewires much faster. The third principle is focused attention. Your brain changes most rapidly when you're fully present and concentrated on what you're doing. This is why mindlessly repeating affirmations often doesn't work, while deeply focused visualization and meditation can create profound shifts in a relatively short time. When you combine all three principles, repetition, emotional intensity, and focused attention, you create the perfect conditions for rapid neural work. Rewiring. You're essentially giving your brain clear instructions about how you want it to change, and then providing the optimal environment for that change to happen. Scientists have documented incredible examples of neuroplasticity in action. Stroke patients who lost the ability to speak or move have rewired their brains to regain these functions by creating entirely new neural pathways. London taxi drivers who must memorize thousands of streets actually develop larger hippocampus regions in their brains. Musicians who practice intensively show dramatic changes in the areas of their brains responsible for fine motor control. But you don't need to be recovering from a stroke or learning to play an instrument to harness the power of neuroplasticity. You can use these same principles to rewire your brain for confidence instead of self-doubt, for abundance instead of scarcity, for possibility instead of limitation. The most exciting part of this research is the discovery that you can literally think your way into a new identity. When you consistently think thoughts that align with the person you want to become, your brain begins to wire itself to support that identity. Your neural patterns start to match your desired self-image. Your brain begins to filter reality in ways that support your new identity rather than your old one. This is why affirmations work when they're done correctly. It's not about magical thinking or mystical energy. It's about systematically rewiring your brain to support new thought patterns and new beliefs about yourself. When you repeatedly affirm, "I am confident," while feeling confident and focusing intently on that identity, you're literally building the neural pathways of confidence. The same principle applies to visualization. When you vividly imagine yourself succeeding, achieving your goals, and embodying your ideal self, Your brain cannot tell the difference between the imagined experience and reality. The same neural pathways fire. The same changes occur. You're essentially rehearsing being the person you want to become, and your brain is rewiring itself to make that identity more natural and automatic. This scientific understanding changes everything about personal development. It means you're not trying to fight against your nature or overcome some fixed aspect of your personality. You're simply using the natural plasticity of your brain to create the mental patterns that will serve you best. The old you isn't trying to hold you back out of spite. The old patterns aren't trying to sabotage you. They're simply the result of previous programming, and they can be reprogrammed just as easily as they were originally programmed. You have the power to become the architect of your own consciousness. Chapter 4. The Identity Construction Process. There's a profound truth most people never discover. You don't just have an identity. You are constantly constructing your identity through the thoughts you choose to think. Every moment of every day, you're either reinforcing who you've been or building who you're becoming. Most people think their identity is fixed, something they discovered about themselves. But the reality is far more empowering. Your identity is something you actively create. Right now, you have a story about who you are. This story includes beliefs about your abilities, your value, your potential, and your limitations. You might think of yourself as confident or shy, successful or struggling, creative or analytical, extroverted or introverted. These labels feel true because you've been thinking thoughts that support them for so long, they've become automatic. But here's what changes everything. These identity labels are not facts about you. They're simply mental habits you've reinforced through repetition. And because they're habits, they can be changed. You can literally think yourself into a new identity by consistently choosing thoughts that align with who you want to become, instead of who you've been. The process of identity creation happens through what psychologists call identity-based thinking. This is when you start making decisions and thinking thoughts based on the identity you want to embody, rather than the identity you currently have. Instead of thinking, "I want to be confident," you start thinking, "I am confident. So what would a confident person do in this situation?" This shift is subtle but incredibly powerful. When you think from your desired identity instead of toward it, you start training your brain to operate from that new perspective. You begin to notice different things, feel different emotions, and take different actions. Over time, this new way of thinking becomes natural, and the identity you're practicing becomes who you actually are. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine someone who sees themselves as not a morning person. Every morning they hit snooze multiple times, drag themselves out of bed, and start their day feeling behind and stressed. They reinforce this identity by telling themselves and others, "I'm just not a morning person," whenever it comes up. But what if this person decided to create a new identity as someone who jumps out of bed, energized and ready to embrace the day? They would start by thinking different thoughts. I am someone who wakes up refreshed and excited about the day ahead. They would visualize themselves leaping out of bed with enthusiasm. They would make decisions throughout the day that support this new identity, like going to bed earlier and preparing for the morning the night before. At first, this new identity would feel forced and unnatural. The old neural pathways would still be strong, and the old identity would feel more real. But through consistent practice, the new identity would gradually become stronger. The person would start to actually experience more energy in the morning. They would begin to look forward to waking up. Eventually, being a morning person would feel as natural and true as not being a morning person once did. This same process works for any aspect of identity. You can think yourself into being more confident, more creative, more disciplined, more successful, or more loving. The key is understanding that identity is not something you discover about yourself. It's something you decide about yourself and then consistently practice until it becomes automatic. The most successful people in the world, whether they realize it or not, are masters of identity creation. They don't just set goals and work toward them. They first decide who they need to become to achieve those goals. And then they start thinking and acting from that identity immediately. They don't wait until they achieve success to think like a successful person. They think like a successful person first, and success becomes the natural result. This is why traditional goal setting often fails. Most people focus on what they want to achieve without considering who they need to become to achieve it. They keep thinking the same thoughts and maintaining the same identity while expecting different results. But your external results will always be consistent with your internal identity. If you want to change your results, you have to change your identity first. The beautiful thing about identity creation is that you don't need permission from anyone else to start. You don't need to wait until you feel ready or until your circumstances change. You can begin thinking from your new identity right now, in this moment. You can start asking yourself, what would the person I want to become think about this situation? How would they feel? What would they do? At first, you might not know the answers to these questions. That's perfectly normal. You're creating a new identity, not accessing an existing one. The answers will become clearer as you practice thinking from this new perspective. Your brain will start to generate thoughts, feelings, and ideas that are consistent with your chosen identity. The process becomes even more powerful when you combine identity-based thinking with visualization and affirmation. Instead of just saying, "I am confident," you can visualize yourself moving through the world with confidence, feeling the emotions of confidence, and receiving the responses that confident people receive. You're not just affirming an identity, you're experiencing it in your mind. Remember, your brain doesn't distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. When you mentally rehearse being the person you want to become, you're actually practicing that identity at a neurological level. You're building the neural pathways that will make that identity feel natural and automatic. The key to successful identity creation is consistency and patience. You're literally rewiring decades of neural programming, and that takes time. There will be moments when your old identity feels stronger and more real than your new one. This is normal and expected. The old neural pathways are still there, and they'll try to pull you back into familiar patterns. But every time you choose to think from your new identity instead of your old one, you're strengthening the new pathways and weakening the old ones. Every time you catch yourself thinking an old thought and consciously choose a new one, you're practicing the skill of identity creation. Eventually, thinking from your new identity will become as automatic as thinking from your old one ever was. The most empowering realization is that you are not stuck with the identity you've had until now. You are not limited by your past experiences, your current circumstances, or other people's opinions of who you are. You have the power to consciously create any identity you choose, and your brain will rewire itself to support that new identity. You become what you think, not because of some mystical law of attraction, but because of the very real and scientifically proven process of neuroplasticity and identity creation. When you consistently think thoughts that align with your desired identity, your brain literally reshapes itself to make that identity your lived reality. Chapter 5: Escaping Your Mental Cage. There's an invisible cage that imprisons more people than any physical jail ever could. It has no steel bars, no concrete walls, and no armed guards. Yet it's more restrictive than the most maximum security facility on Earth. This cage is built entirely from thoughts, and most of its prisoners don't even know they're locked up. They mistake the boundaries of their mental cage for the edges of reality itself. Every limiting belief you carry, every fear that freezes you from taking action, every voice whispering in your ear that says, "You can't do that," or "That's not meant for people like you." These are the bars of this invisible cage. These mental barriers feel absolutely solid because you've been living with them for so long that you can't imagine existence without them. But the shocking truth is that most of these limitations exist only in your consciousness. Think about this for a moment. Right now, there are probably things you believe you cannot do. Dreams you think are impossible for you. Aspirations you've abandoned because they seem unrealistic. But what if I told you that many of these limitations are not based on actual impossibility? What if they're based on inherited programming, past experiences that no longer apply, or simply thoughts you've repeated so often they feel like truth? The most heartbreaking part of mental imprisonment is that the prisoners often become their own jailers. They police their own thoughts, shut down their own dreams, and talk themselves out of opportunities before anyone else even has a chance to say no. They've internalized the voices of limitation so completely that they do the work of restriction without being asked. Here's how this cage gets constructed. From early childhood, you receive thousands of messages about what's achievable and what isn't. Some of these messages are straightforward. Don't get your hopes up. Money doesn't come easy. People like us don't do things like that. Others are indirect, communicated through the examples you witness around you. If you rarely see people chasing big dreams, your mind concludes that big dreams must be unrealistic. Over time, these messages pile up and solidify into what psychologists call limiting beliefs. These beliefs operate like invisible force fields, preventing you from even considering certain possibilities. They don't just stop you from taking action, they stop you from thinking thoughts that could lead to action. They create a mental box that feels like the entire universe. But here's the key insight that can set you free. These limiting beliefs are not facts about reality. They're simply thoughts you've thought so many times that they feel true. And because they're thoughts, they can be changed. The cage exists only in your mind, which means you hold the key to your own freedom. The first step in breaking free is recognition. You have to become aware of the limiting beliefs that are running your life. This requires paying attention to your internal dialogue, especially the thoughts that surface when you consider pursuing something important to you. Notice the voice that says, "That's impossible. You're not qualified. Who do you think you are?" Or, "That never works out for people like you." These thoughts might feel like practical wisdom or realistic assessment, but they're actually just old programming trying to keep you in familiar territory. Your mind is designed to prioritize safety over expansion, certainty over possibility. It would rather keep you in a small, known world than risk the uncertainty of growth. But this protective mechanism, which served you as a child, becomes a prison as an adult. Once you identify these limiting beliefs, the next step is to challenge their validity. Ask yourself, is this actually true, or is it just something I've been told or learned to believe? Where did this belief originate? Is it based on facts or on fear? Is this belief helping me expand, or is it keeping me small? Most limiting beliefs crumble under examination because they're not based on current reality. They're based on outdated information, other people's limitations, or isolated experiences that have been blown up into universal truths. When you really examine them, you often discover they're not nearly as solid as they seemed. The third step is replacement. You can't just remove a limiting belief and leave empty space. You have to replace it with a new, empowering belief that serves your growth. If you've been thinking, "I'm not smart enough to start my own business," you might replace it with, "I am capable of learning whatever I need to know to thrive." If you've been thinking, "I always mess up relationships," you might replace it with, "I am learning and evolving in my ability to create loving connections." The key to successful belief replacement is making the new belief feel emotionally real. You can't just intellectually decide to believe something new. You have to feel it, visualize it, and experience it in your imagination until your subconscious mind accepts it as truth. This is where the power of mental rehearsal becomes crucial. Mental rehearsal is the practice of vividly imagining yourself succeeding, achieving your goals, and embodying your new beliefs. When you do this consistently, your brain begins to wire itself for success instead of limitation. You're literally practicing being free from your mental cage, and your mind starts to accept freedom as the new normal. But breaking free from mental cages requires more than just changing beliefs. It requires changing your entire relationship with your thoughts. Instead of accepting every thought as truth, you learn to observe your thoughts objectively. You realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that observes thoughts. This shift in perspective is incredibly liberating because it means you're no longer at the mercy of your mental conditioning. When you truly understand that thoughts are just mental events, not absolute truths, you gain the power to choose which thoughts to accept and which to reject. You become the gatekeeper of your own consciousness. You realize that you don't have to believe every thought your mind generates, and you don't have to act on every feeling that arises. This is the moment when true freedom begins. When you recognize that you are not trapped by your circumstances, your past, or your programming. You are only trapped by your thoughts about these things. And thoughts can be changed, always. The process of breaking free is not always easy, and it's not always comfortable. Your mind will resist change because change represents uncertainty, and uncertainty feels dangerous to the survival-oriented parts of your brain. There will be moments when the old patterns feel stronger and more real than the new ones you're trying to create. But every time you choose a new thought over an old one, every time you question a limiting belief instead of accepting it, every time you act despite fear instead of because of it, you're literally rewiring your brain for freedom. You're proving to yourself that the cage walls were never real, that the limitations were never absolute, and that you have far more power than you ever imagined. The ultimate realization is this: you were never actually limited in the first place. You were simply conditioned to believe in limitation. The moment you stop believing in the walls of your mental cage, they dissolve. The moment you stop accepting thoughts of limitation as truth, they lose their power over you. The moment you realize that you become what you think, you gain the power to think yourself into any reality you choose to create. Chapter 6: The Art of Choosing Your Thoughts. Every single moment of your life, you're faced with a choice that will shape your future. Which thoughts will you feed, and which will you starve? Most people never realize they have this choice. They treat their thoughts like weather, something that happens to them beyond their control. But the truth is, you have far more power over your thoughts than you realize. And learning to exercise this power is the key to transforming your entire existence. Your mind generates thousands of thoughts every day. Some of these thoughts serve you, moving you toward your goals and reinforcing the identity you want to create. Others work against you, reinforcing old patterns and keeping you stuck in limitation. The difference between people who transform their lives and those who remain stuck isn't the quality of thoughts their minds generate. It's their ability to consciously select which thoughts to nurture and which to let wither. Think of your mind like a garden. In any garden, you'll find both flowers and weeds growing naturally. The flowers represent empowering thoughts that help you flourish. The weeds represent limiting thoughts that choke out your potential. A skilled gardener doesn't waste energy being upset that weeds exist. They simply pull them out and focus their energy on nurturing the flowers. Your mind works the same way. The first step in thought selection is developing awareness. Most people are completely unconscious of their thinking patterns. Thoughts arise automatically, and they accept them without question. But when you develop the ability to observe your thoughts objectively, you gain the power to choose which ones deserve your attention and which ones should be dismissed. This process begins with what psychologists call metacognition, thinking about thinking. Instead of being swept up in the content of your thoughts, you step back and observe the thinking process itself. You notice when your mind generates a limiting thought, and instead of automatically believing it, you pause and ask, is this thought helpful? Does it move me toward my goals or away from them? Is it based on truth or on fear? When you catch yourself thinking a thought that doesn't serve you, you don't need to battle it or suppress it. Fighting thoughts only makes them stronger. Instead, you simply acknowledge the thought and then consciously choose to redirect your attention to a thought that better serves your goals. It's like changing the station on a radio. You don't destroy the station you don't want to hear. You simply tune in to a different frequency. For example, if you catch yourself thinking, I'm not good enough for this opportunity, you might acknowledge that thought and then consciously choose to think, I am learning and growing, and I'm exactly where I need to be to take the next step. You're not denying reality or engaging in wishful thinking. You're choosing to focus on thoughts that empower you rather than thoughts that diminish you. The key to effective thought selection is having a clear vision of who you want to become. When you know the identity you're trying to create, it becomes much easier to evaluate whether a thought supports that identity or undermines it. Every thought becomes either a vote for your desired future self or a vote for your old patterns. The choice is always yours. This process requires practice and patience. You've been thinking automatically for so long that conscious thought selection will feel strange at first. Your mind will resist this new level of awareness because it threatens the old patterns that have been running automatically. But every time you choose an empowering thought over a limiting one, you're strengthening your ability to direct your own consciousness. Over time, thought selection becomes more natural and automatic. You develop an internal filtering system that naturally gravitates toward thoughts that serve your highest potential. Your mind begins to generate more empowering thoughts spontaneously because you've trained it to do so through conscious selection. You literally rewire your brain to think thoughts that support the life you want to create. The most powerful realization is that you are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that observes thoughts and chooses which ones to accept. This understanding gives you tremendous freedom because it means you're never trapped by any particular thought or mental pattern. No matter how strong or persistent a limiting thought might be, you always have the power to observe it objectively and choose something better. Thought selection is not about positive thinking or denial of reality. It's about taking conscious control of the most powerful creative force in your life, your thinking mind. When you learn to consistently choose thoughts that align with your desired identity and goals, you discover that you truly do become what you think, because you're thinking yourself into the person you want to be. Chapter 7. Upgrading your mind's operating system. Your mind operates like a sophisticated computer with a mental operating system that determines how you process information, make decisions, and respond to the world around you. Just like a computer's operating system, your mental operating system was installed early in your life and has been running largely unchanged ever since. But, unlike a computer, you have the power to upgrade your mental operating system at any time. Your current mental operating system was programmed by your early experiences, your environment, and the people who influenced you during your formative years. This programming determines your default responses to challenges, your automatic emotional reactions, and your unconscious beliefs about what's possible for your life. For most people, this operating system contains outdated software that no longer serves their current goals and aspirations. The problem with running outdated mental software is that it limits your ability to process new information and adapt to new circumstances. You might have the intelligence and capability to achieve great things, but if your mental operating system is programmed for limitation, it will sabotage your efforts every time you try to exceed its programmed parameters. Upgrading your mental operating system requires understanding that most of your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are not conscious choices. They're automatic programs running in the background of your mind. These programs were installed through repetition and emotional intensity, and they can be replaced using the same methods. The first step in upgrading your mental operating system is identifying the core programs that are currently running. These programs usually reveal themselves through your automatic thoughts, your emotional patterns, and your consistent behaviors. If you consistently think thoughts of self-doubt when faced with opportunities, that's a program. If you automatically feel anxious in social situations, that's a program. If you consistently procrastinate on important tasks, that's a program. Once you identify these automatic programs, you can begin the process of conscious reprogramming. This involves deliberately installing new mental software that better serves your current goals and desired identity. The key is consistency and emotional engagement. You must practice your new mental programs with the same intensity and repetition that installed the old ones. Mental rehearsal is one of the most powerful tools for reprogramming your operating system. When you vividly imagine yourself thinking, feeling, and behaving in new ways, you're literally installing new neural software. Your brain doesn't distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. So mental practice creates the same neural changes as physical practice. For example, if you want to install a program for confidence, you would spend time each day mentally rehearsing confident thoughts, confident posture, confident speech, and confident actions. You would imagine yourself moving through various situations with complete self-assurance, feeling the emotions of confidence, and receiving positive responses from others. With enough repetition, this mental rehearsal becomes your new default programming. Affirmations work as part of this reprogramming process, but only when they're done correctly. Simply repeating positive statements without emotional engagement is like trying to install software without the proper installation process. It doesn't take hold. Effective affirmations are emotionally charged, personally meaningful, and repeated consistently until they feel natural and true. The most powerful affirmations are identity-based rather than goal-based. Instead of affirming, "I will be successful," you affirm, "I am a successful person." Instead of, "I want to be confident," you affirm, "I am confident." This subtle shift programs your mind to operate from your desired identity rather than toward it. Environmental programming is another crucial aspect of mental rewiring. Your mind is constantly being influenced by the information you consume, the people you spend time with, and the environments you inhabit. If you want to install new mental programming, you must consciously curate your environment to support that programming. This means surrounding yourself with examples of the mindset you want to develop. Read books by people who embody the identity you're creating. Listen to podcasts and watch content that reinforces your new mental programming. Spend time with people who think and act in ways that align with your desired identity. Your mind learns through observation and osmosis, so make sure you're exposing it to the right influences. The process of mental reprogramming also requires breaking old patterns through conscious intervention. Every time you catch yourself running an old program, thinking an old thought, feeling an old emotion, or acting out an old behavior, you have an opportunity to install new software. Instead of automatically following the old program, pause and consciously choose a new response that aligns with your desired identity. This interruption of automatic patterns is crucial because it weakens the old neural pathways while strengthening new ones. Each time you choose a new response over an automatic one, you're literally rewiring your brain. Over time, these new responses become automatic, and you've successfully upgraded your mental operating system. The key to successful mental reprogramming is understanding that change happens gradually, then suddenly. At first, your new programming will feel forced and unnatural because the old programs are still strong. But with consistent practice, there's a tipping point where the new programming becomes stronger than the old, and your new way of thinking, feeling, and behaving becomes effortless and natural. Remember, you're not trying to fix something that's broken. You're upgrading to a more advanced version of yourself. Your mind is incredibly adaptable and capable of running any software you choose to install. The question is, what kind of mental operating system do you want to be running 1 year from now? Chapter 8: The Practice of Mental Conditioning. Elite athletes understand something most people never discover. Peak performance isn't just about physical training. It's about mental conditioning, systematic practice of training your mind to think, feel, and respond in ways that consistently produce excellent results. What most people don't realize is that this same principle applies to every area of life. You can condition your mind for success, confidence, creativity, or any other quality you want to develop. Mental conditioning is different from positive thinking or motivation. It's not about pumping yourself up or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It's about systematically training your mind to operate at a higher level through deliberate practice and consistent repetition. Just as physical conditioning makes your body stronger and more capable, mental conditioning makes your mind more resilient, focused, and effective. The foundation of mental conditioning is understanding that your mind, like your body, responds to training. When you consistently practice certain mental patterns, they become stronger and more automatic. When you neglect certain mental skills, they weaken. This means you can literally train yourself to think like the most successful people in your field, to feel emotions that serve your goals, and to respond to challenges with clarity and composure. The first element of effective mental conditioning is clarity of intention. You must be absolutely clear about what mental qualities you want to develop. Vague intentions produce vague results. Instead of saying, "I want to be more confident," you define exactly what confidence looks like for you. I want to speak up in meetings without hesitation, approach new people with ease, and take on challenging projects without self-doubt. Once you're clear on your intention, you create specific mental exercises designed to strengthen those qualities. If you want to develop unshakable confidence, you might practice confidence-building visualizations every morning, rehearsing scenarios where you demonstrate complete self-assurance. If you want to develop laser focus, you might practice concentration exercises that train your mind to sustain attention for longer periods without distraction. The key to effective mental conditioning is treating it like physical exercise. You must be consistent, progressive, and intentional. Just as you wouldn't expect to get physically fit by exercising randomly or without effort, you can't expect to develop mental strength without committed practice. You must set aside dedicated time for mental training and approach it with the same seriousness you would bring to physical conditioning. Visualization is one of the most powerful tools in mental conditioning. When done correctly, visualization isn't just daydreaming or wishful thinking. It's systematic mental rehearsal that programs your subconscious mind for success. You create detailed mental movies of yourself performing at your best, feeling exactly how you want to feel, and achieving the results you desire. The more vivid and emotionally engaging these mental rehearsals are, more powerfully they condition your mind. Mental conditioning also involves developing what psychologists call emotional regulation, the ability to maintain optimal emotional states regardless of external circumstances. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending to feel something you don't. It means training your mind to generate and maintain emotions that serve your goals, even when faced with challenges or setbacks. For example, you can condition yourself to feel excited about challenges instead of anxious. You can train your mind to interpret obstacles as opportunities for growth rather than evidence that you should quit. You can develop the ability to maintain calm confidence even in high-pressure situations. These aren't personality traits you're born with. They're mental skills you can develop through practice. Another crucial aspect of mental conditioning is developing mental resilience, the ability to bounce back quickly from setbacks and maintain forward momentum, regardless of what happens. Mental resilience isn't about being tough or emotionless. It's about having a conditioned response to adversity that allows you to extract lessons, maintain perspective, and continue moving toward your goals. This resilience is developed through what psychologists call cognitive reframing, the practice of consciously choosing empowering interpretations of events. Instead of automatically seeing failures as evidence of your inadequacy, you train your mind to see them as valuable feedback and learning opportunities. Instead of viewing challenges as threats, you condition yourself to see them as chances to grow stronger and more capable. The most advanced form of mental conditioning involves training your mind to enter peak performance states at will. These are states of consciousness where you feel completely focused, confident, and capable. Elite performers in every field have learned to access these states consistently through specific mental triggers and conditioning practices. You can develop your own peak performance triggers through consistent practice. This might involve specific breathing patterns, particular phrases you repeat to yourself, or mental images that instantly shift your state. The key is practicing these triggers when you're already in a peak state, so your mind learns to associate the trigger with the desired mental and emotional condition. Mental conditioning also requires what athletes call pressure training, deliberately practicing your mental skills under challenging conditions. It's easy to maintain confidence and focus when everything is going well. But true mental conditioning means being able to access your best mental state even when facing pressure, criticism, or uncertainty. The beautiful truth about mental conditioning is that it compounds over time. Each day you practice, you're not just improving for that day. You're building mental strength that will serve you for years to come. Your mind becomes more naturally inclined toward the states and patterns you've been conditioning, until excellence becomes your default, rather than something you have to work to achieve. Remember, every thought you think is either conditioning your mind for limitation or conditioning it for excellence. The choice is always yours, and the results are always inevitable. When you approach mental conditioning with the same dedication and consistency that elite athletes bring to physical training, you develop a mind that becomes your greatest asset in achieving any goal you set. Chapter 9. Interrupting the Cycle of Autopilot Thinking. Right now, as you're absorbing these words, there's a constant river of thoughts flowing through your consciousness. Most of these thoughts are completely automatic, arising without your conscious intention, following familiar grooves that have been carved over years or even decades. These automatic thoughts are like mental habits, and just like any habit, they can either serve you or trap you. The problem is, most people never realize they have the power to interrupt the cycle of automatic thinking and consciously choose their mental patterns. Automatic thinking develops because your brain is engineered for efficiency. It doesn't want to burn conscious energy thinking about every little thing, so it creates mental shortcuts. automatic patterns that allow you to navigate familiar situations without conscious effort. This is incredibly useful for basic tasks like driving a familiar route or performing routine activities. But when these automatic patterns are negative or limiting, they become mental traps that keep you stuck in old realities. The cycle of automatic thinking works like this. A situation triggers an automatic thought, which generates an emotion, which drives a behavior, which reinforces the original thought pattern. For example, you might automatically think, "I'm terrible at public speaking," when asked to give a presentation. This thought generates anxiety, which causes you to avoid speaking opportunities, which reinforces your belief that you're terrible at it. The cycle becomes self-perpetuating and self-fulfilling. Most people are completely unconscious of these automatic cycles. They experience the emotions and behaviors without realizing they originated from automatic thoughts that could be questioned and changed. They assume their reactions are just part of their personality or natural responses to situations, never recognizing they're actually responses to thoughts that happen so quickly they barely register in consciousness. Breaking free from automatic thinking begins with developing what meditation teachers call mindful awareness, the ability to observe your thoughts as they arise without immediately being swept away by them. This is not about suppressing thoughts or judging them as good or bad. It's about creating a small space between you and your thoughts so you can observe them objectively rather than automatically believing and acting on them. The first step in developing this awareness is simply noticing when you're thinking automatically versus when you're thinking consciously. Automatic thoughts usually feel urgent, emotional, and unquestionable. They arise quickly and demand immediate belief and action. Conscious thoughts, on the other hand, feel more deliberate, calm, and open to examination. They arise from choice rather than habit. Once you develop the ability to notice automatic thoughts, you can begin questioning them. This doesn't mean arguing with your thoughts or trying to convince yourself they're wrong. It means approaching them with gentle curiosity. Is this thought actually true? Where did this thought come from? Is this thought helping me or limiting me? What would I think about this situation if I were thinking consciously rather than automatically? This questioning process is incredibly powerful because it interrupts the automatic cycle. Instead of thought leading directly to emotion, to behavior, you insert a moment of conscious evaluation. This brief pause is all you need to choose a different thought, which will generate a different emotion and lead to a different behavior. The most effective way to interrupt automatic thinking patterns is to replace them with consciously chosen thoughts. You can't just remove an automatic thought and leave empty space. Nature abhors a vacuum, and your mind will fill that space with another automatic thought. Instead, you must consciously install new thought patterns that serve your goals and desired identity. This installation process requires repetition and emotional engagement. When you catch yourself thinking an automatic limiting thought, you consciously choose a more empowering thought and focus on it with intention and feeling. For example, if you catch yourself automatically thinking, "I always screw things up," You might consciously choose to think, I am learning and improving with every experience. The key is not just thinking the new thought, but feeling it and believing it with emotional intensity. One of the most powerful techniques for interrupting automatic thinking is what psychologists call thought stopping. When you notice an automatic thought pattern beginning, you mentally say, "Stop," and immediately redirect your attention to something else, a chosen thought, a physical sensation, or an external focus. This technique trains your mind to interrupt automatic patterns before they gain momentum. Another effective approach is pattern interruption, deliberately doing something unexpected when you notice automatic thinking taking over. This might be changing your physical position, taking deep breaths, or asking yourself a completely different question. The goal is to break the automatic flow and create space for conscious choice. The most advanced practitioners of conscious thinking develop what could be called thought awareness, the ability to observe the arising of thoughts in real time and choose whether to engage with them or not. They develop a kind of internal witness that watches the thinking process without being caught up in it. This level of awareness gives them tremendous freedom because they're no longer at the mercy of whatever thoughts happen to arise. Interrupting the cycle of automatic thinking also requires understanding that thoughts are not facts. They're just mental events that arise and pass away. You don't have to believe every thought your mind generates, and you don't have to act on every impulse that arises. You can observe thoughts objectively, evaluate their usefulness, and choose which ones deserve your attention and energy. This process takes practice and patience. You've been thinking automatically for so long that conscious thinking will feel unnatural at first. Your mind will resist this new level of awareness because it threatens the efficiency of automatic processing. But every time you choose conscious thought over automatic reaction, you're strengthening your ability to direct your own consciousness. The ultimate goal is not to eliminate all automatic thinking. That would be impossible and unnecessary. The goal is to ensure that your automatic thoughts serve your highest potential, rather than limiting it. When you consistently practice conscious thinking, your mind begins to generate more empowering automatic thoughts. Your default mental patterns shift from limitation to possibility, from fear to confidence, from reaction to conscious response. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that has the power to observe thoughts, evaluate them, and choose which ones to accept. This understanding is the key to breaking free from any mental pattern that doesn't serve you, and consciously creating the mental patterns that will transform your life. Chapter 10. The multiplying effect of conscious thinking. Most people dramatically underestimate the power of a single thought. They treat thoughts as fleeting mental events that come and go without consequence. But the truth is, every thought you think has a multiplying effect. It doesn't just influence the present moment. It shapes your future by literally rewiring your brain and creating momentum in a particular direction. Understanding the multiplying effect of conscious thinking is crucial because it reveals why small changes in your thinking patterns can produce extraordinary transformations over time. The multiplying effect works the same way with thoughts as it does with money in a savings account. When you invest money and earn compound interest, the returns don't just add up, they multiply, creating exponential growth over time. A small investment today becomes a substantial sum decades later because each period's returns generate even more returns. Your thoughts work exactly the same way. Each thought strengthens neural pathways, influences your emotions, affects your decisions, and shapes your actions. These effects multiply over time, creating massive changes from seemingly small beginnings. Here's how the multiplying effect of thinking works. When you think a thought once, it creates a weak neural pathway in your brain. When you think the same thought again, that pathway becomes slightly stronger. Each repetition makes the pathway more established until, eventually, the thought becomes automatic and effortless. But the effect doesn't stop there. As the thought becomes more automatic, it influences your emotions more consistently. As your emotions change, your behaviors change. As your behaviors change, your results change. As your results change, your identity changes. One thought repeated consistently can literally transform who you are. The same process works in reverse with negative thoughts. Each time you think a limiting or destructive thought, you're strengthening neural pathways that make that type of thinking more automatic. Over time, negative thinking multiplies into pessimistic emotions, self-defeating behaviors, poor results, and a diminished sense of self. This is why people can spiral downwards so quickly when they get caught in negative thinking patterns. The multiplying effect works against them. The key insight is that the multiplying effect makes small changes incredibly powerful over time. You don't need to completely transform your thinking overnight. You just need to make small, consistent improvements in the quality of your thoughts, and the multiplying effect will do the rest. One slightly more. Empowering thought, repeated daily, can change the entire trajectory of your life. This is why awareness of your thinking patterns is so crucial. Every moment, you're either contributing to positive compound growth or negative compound growth. There's no neutral ground. Your thoughts are always moving you in one direction or the other. When you become conscious of this process, you gain the power to deliberately steer the multiplying effect in your favor. The most successful people in every field understand the multiplying effect of thinking, whether they call it that or not. They know their current thoughts are creating their future reality, so they guard their mental space carefully. They consistently choose thoughts that multiply into confidence, optimism, creativity, and success. They understand that thinking is not just something that happens to them, it's the most important investment they can make in their future. To harness the multiplying effect of conscious thinking, you must first identify the key areas where your thoughts have the greatest impact on your life. These are usually areas related to your self-image, your beliefs about what's possible, your interpretation of challenges and setbacks, and your vision of your future. Small improvements in thinking in these areas multiply into massive life changes. For example, if you've been thinking, "I'm hopeless with money," and you start consciously thinking, "I'm becoming excellent with money." This small shift multiplies over time. First, the new thought makes you more open to financial education. This leads to better financial decisions. Better decisions lead to better results. Better results reinforce your new identity as someone who's good with money. Eventually, the multiplying effect transforms not just your finances, but your entire relationship with abundance and prosperity. The multiplying effect is accelerated when you combine conscious thinking with emotional intensity and visualization. When you think empowering thoughts with strong emotion and vivid mental imagery, you create much stronger neural pathways much more quickly. This is why the most powerful transformations happen when people combine clear thinking, intense emotion, and detailed visualization. They're maximizing the multiplying effect of their mental energy. Consistency is absolutely crucial for the multiplying effect to work in your favor. Thinking empowering thoughts occasionally doesn't create lasting change because the multiplying effect requires repetition over time. You must think your new thoughts consistently, even when you don't feel like it, even when the old thoughts seem easier or more natural. The multiplying effect rewards consistency above intensity. This is also why it's important to be patient with the process. Just as financial compound interest seems to work slowly at first and then accelerates dramatically, the multiplying effect of thinking often appears to work slowly initially. You might not see dramatic changes in the first weeks or even months of conscious thinking. But if you stay consistent, there will come a point where the changes accelerate rapidly, and you'll be amazed at how different your life becomes. The multiplying effect also explains why some people seem to have overnight success, while others struggle for years. The people who appear to succeed overnight have usually been multiplying their way to success for years before anyone noticed. They've been consistently thinking thoughts of possibility, capability, and success until those thoughts multiplied into undeniable reality. Understanding the multiplying effect should also motivate you to eliminate toxic thinking patterns as quickly as possible. Just as positive thoughts multiply into positive results, negative thoughts multiply into negative outcomes. The sooner you interrupt negative compound cycles, the easier it is to redirect your mental energy toward positive compound growth. The most empowering realization about the multiplying effect is that it's never too late to start. No matter how long you've been thinking in limiting ways, you can begin the multiplying effect of empowering thinking right now. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself, which means positive changes can begin immediately and multiply from this moment forward. Every thought you choose to think is an investment in your future self. The question is, are you investing in the compound growth of limitation and struggle, or in the compound growth of possibility and success? The choice is always yours, and the multiplying effect ensures that your choice today will determine who you become tomorrow. Chapter 11. The Reality Construction Protocol. There exists a systematic process for transforming thoughts into tangible reality. And once you understand this process, you gain the power to consciously create any life you can envision. This isn't mystical thinking or wishful hoping. This is a practical protocol based on how your brain processes information and translates mental patterns into physical actions and results. The reality construction protocol operates on a simple but profound principle. Your external world will always mirror your internal world, given enough time and consistency. Your thoughts create your beliefs. Your beliefs shape your emotions. Your emotions drive your actions, and your actions produce your results. Most people experience this process unconsciously, which is why their external reality often feels random or beyond their control. But when you understand and apply this protocol consciously, you become the deliberate architect of your own life. The first phase of the reality construction protocol is mental blueprint. This is where you create a clear, detailed mental design of the reality you want to experience. Most people skip this crucial step, which is why their efforts to change their lives often fail. You cannot create what you cannot clearly envision. Your subconscious mind needs specific instructions about what to create, and these instructions come through vivid, emotionally charged mental imagery. Mental blueprint involves more than just setting goals or making vision boards. It requires you to mentally experience your desired reality in complete detail. Not just what you'll have, but who you'll be, how you'll feel, how you'll spend your days, how others will respond to you, and what your internal experience will be like. The more sensory detail you include in your mental blueprint, the more real it becomes to your subconscious mind. The second phase is neural programming. This is where you systematically train your brain to support your desired reality through repetition, emotion, and focused attention. Your brain doesn't distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. So when you repeatedly visualize your desired reality with intense emotion and complete focus, you're literally conditioning your brain to make that reality feel natural and inevitable. Neural programming requires daily practice, preferably at times when your brain is most receptive, typically first thing in the morning and last thing at night. During these sessions, you don't just think about your desired reality, you experience it mentally. You feel the emotions you would feel. You see through the eyes of your future self. You embody the identity of the person who has already achieved what you're working toward. The third phase is identity synchronization. Your actions will always be consistent with your identity. So, if you want to create a new reality, you must first become the person who would naturally create that reality. This means identifying the thoughts, beliefs, values, and habits of your desired identity and beginning to embody them immediately, before you see external evidence of change. Identity synchronization is about acting from your desired identity rather than toward it. Instead of thinking, when I'm successful, I'll be confident, you start thinking and acting confidently now, because that's who you are in your desired reality. This shift in identity creates massive changes in your behavior because you're no longer trying to become someone else. You're simply being yourself. your evolved self. The fourth phase is reality bridging. This is where you begin taking physical actions that bridge the gap between your current reality and your desired reality. These actions are guided by your new identity and informed by your mental blueprint. You start making decisions, forming relationships, and pursuing opportunities that align with your envisioned future rather than your current circumstances. Reality bridging requires courage because it often means acting before you feel ready, investing before you see guaranteed returns, and stepping into uncertainty because your vision demands it. But when your identity is synchronized with your desired reality, these actions feel natural rather than forced, because they're consistent with who you believe yourself to be. The fifth phase is momentum multiplication. As you consistently apply the first 4 phases, you begin to see evidence that your reality is shifting. These early signs of progress create positive momentum that accelerates the entire process. Your increased confidence attracts more opportunities. Your improved results reinforce your new identity, and your growing success makes your vision feel more achievable. During the momentum multiplication phase, it's crucial to maintain focus on your desired reality rather than getting caught up in current circumstances. Your external reality will always lag behind your internal transformation, so you must continue operating from your future identity even when your current results don't yet reflect your vision. The final phase is reality stabilization. This is where your desired reality becomes your lived reality, and maintaining it becomes natural and effortless. Your new identity has become automatic. Your empowering thought patterns have become default, and your external circumstances have synchronized with your internal transformation. Reality stabilization doesn't mean you stop growing or evolving. It means you've successfully applied the reality construction protocol and can now use it to create even greater realities. You've proven to yourself that you truly do become what you think, and you can trust this process to create whatever you envision next. The key to successful reality construction is understanding that this is not a one-time process, but a way of living. You're always creating your reality through your thoughts, whether consciously or unconsciously. The reality construction protocol simply gives you conscious control over a process that's happening anyway. Remember, your current reality was created by your past thinking. Your future reality is being created by your current thinking. The reality construction protocol ensures that your future reality is the one you consciously choose rather than the one you create by default. Chapter 12: Mastering Your Internal State. Success in any area of life is determined more by what happens inside your mind than by external circumstances. This is what champions in every field understand, that the real competition, the real challenge, and the real victory all happen in the mental realm. Mastering your internal state means developing complete command over your inner world so that, regardless of what's happening around you, you can maintain the thoughts, emotions, and energy that produce excellence. Your internal state operates on the principle that your external performance is always limited by your internal capacity. You cannot consistently perform at a level higher than your mental and emotional programming allows. This is why some people crumble under pressure while others thrive. Why some individuals give up at the first sign of difficulty, while others persist through seemingly impossible challenges. Most people focus almost exclusively on the external game, developing skills, acquiring knowledge, improving techniques, and working harder. While these elements are important, they pale in comparison to the internal state factors that determine whether you'll be able to apply your skills when it matters most. Your internal state is about developing unshakable confidence, emotional resilience, laser focus, and the ability to maintain peak condition regardless of circumstances. The foundation of internal state mastery is emotional sovereignty, the ability to consciously choose your emotional state rather than being controlled by whatever emotions arise automatically. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending to feel something you don't. It means understanding that emotions are largely determined by the thoughts you choose to think, and you can influence your emotional state by directing your mental focus. Emotional sovereignty begins with recognizing that emotions are information, not commands. When fear arises, it's providing information about a potential threat, but it's not commanding you to retreat. When anger emerges, it's highlighting something you perceive as unjust, but it's not commanding you to lash out. When you understand emotions as information rather than directives, you gain the power to feel the emotion, extract the useful information, and then choose your response consciously. The second pillar of internal state mastery is developing what psychologists call mental fortitude, the ability to maintain effective functioning under pressure, adversity, and uncertainty. Mental fortitude isn't about being hard or emotionless. It's about having such a strong internal foundation that external circumstances cannot shake your core confidence and clarity. Mental fortitude is developed through progressive exposure to challenging situations while maintaining optimal internal state. This means deliberately putting yourself in situations that test your emotional sovereignty. Then, practicing maintaining calm confidence regardless of what happens. Each time you successfully manage your inner state under pressure, you build evidence that you can handle whatever comes your way. Another crucial aspect of internal state mastery is developing unwavering concentration, the ability to maintain complete attention on what serves your goals while filtering out everything else. In our distraction-heavy world, the ability to focus deeply is becoming a superpower. Those who can maintain sustained attention on important tasks while resisting the pull of immediate gratification have an enormous advantage. Concentration is like a muscle that strengthens with practice. Every time you choose to focus on something important rather than something immediately gratifying, you're building your concentration capacity. Every time you bring your wandering attention back to your chosen target, you're training your mind to be more disciplined and directed. Your internal state also requires mastering your internal narrative, the constant stream of self-talk that either supports your success or undermines it. Most people are completely unconscious of their internal narrative, allowing their minds to run commentary that often works against their best interests. Mastering your internal state means taking conscious control of this inner voice and ensuring it consistently supports your highest performance. This involves developing what could be called an internal mentor, a voice in your head that encourages, guides, and supports you the way an excellent external mentor would. Instead of internal criticism, you develop internal encouragement. Instead of focusing on what could go wrong, your internal narrative focuses on what you need to do to succeed. Instead of rehearsing failure, you mentally rehearse excellence. Visualization is one of the most powerful tools for internal state mastery. When you vividly imagine yourself performing at your best, handling challenges with grace, and achieving your goals with confidence, you're programming your subconscious mind for success. Your brain treats these mental rehearsals as real experiences, building the neural pathways that will support actual peak performance. The most advanced practitioners of internal state mastery develop what could be called state sovereignty, the ability to maintain their optimal internal state regardless of external circumstances. They don't need everything to go perfectly to perform excellently. They don't need others to behave in certain ways to maintain their confidence. They don't need ideal conditions to access their best capabilities. This state sovereignty comes from understanding that your internal state is your responsibility and your choice. You cannot control what happens around you, but you can always control what happens within you. This realization is incredibly liberating because it means your success is not dependent on circumstances aligning perfectly. It's dependent on your ability to maintain excellence internally. Mastering your internal state also involves developing what resilience researchers call adversarial growth, the ability to not just recover from setbacks, but to use them as catalysts for becoming stronger and more capable. Instead of seeing failures and disappointments as evidence of your limitations, you learn to see them as valuable feedback and opportunities for growth. The ultimate goal of internal state mastery is reaching what athletes call the flow state, a state of consciousness where peak performance feels effortless, where you're completely absorbed in the present moment, where self-doubt disappears, and where you perform at levels that surprise even yourself. While flow might seem like a random occurrence, it's actually a state that can be cultivated through consistent internal state practice. Remember, everyone faces the same types of challenges: fear, doubt, pressure, setbacks, and uncertainty. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't the absence of these challenges. It's the mastery of internal state that allows some people to perform excellently despite these challenges, while others are defeated by them. Chapter 13. The Acceleration Formula. There comes a point in every transformation journey where the rate of change can be dramatically accelerated. Most people never discover this acceleration point because they're focused on changing their external circumstances rather than optimizing their internal processing system. But when you understand how to fine-tune your mind for rapid transformation, you can achieve in months what others take years to accomplish. The acceleration formula operates on the principle of leverage, finding the points where small changes in your internal system create massive changes in your external results. Instead of working harder on changing your behaviors, you work smarter on changing the thoughts and beliefs that drive those behaviors. Instead of fighting against your patterns, you reprogram the patterns themselves. The first component of the acceleration formula is what neuroscientists call state optimal learning. The fact that you learn and change most rapidly when you're in optimal internal states. When you're feeling confident, excited, and focused, your brain is far more receptive to new information and new patterns than when you're feeling anxious, doubtful, or distracted. This means the timing of your transformation work matters enormously. Instead of trying to reprogram your mind when you're feeling low or struggling, you strategically work on transformation when you're already feeling good. You amplify positive states and use them as launching platforms for even greater changes. The second component is pattern layering, the practice of installing multiple empowering patterns simultaneously rather than trying to change one thing at a time. When you combine identity work, visualization, affirmations, and behavioral changes all at once, they reinforce each other and create synergistic effects that accelerate the entire process. For example, instead of just working on confidence or just working on focus, you would simultaneously develop the identity of a confident, focused person. Visualize yourself operating with confidence and focus. Affirm your natural confidence and focus, and take actions that demonstrate confidence and focus. This comprehensive approach creates multiple neural pathways supporting the same transformation, making change much faster and more permanent. The third component is emotional supercharging, using peak emotional states to turbocharge the transformation process. Your brain pays special attention to emotionally intense experiences. So when you can generate intense positive emotions while working on transformation, you create much stronger neural pathways much more quickly. The acceleration formula also involves environmental engineering, consciously designing your environment to support rapid change. This includes the physical spaces you inhabit, the information you consume, the people you spend time with, and the activities you engage in regularly. When your environment consistently reinforces your desired transformation, rather than your old patterns, change happens much more quickly. The most powerful aspect of the acceleration formula is identity velocity. Reaching the point where your new identity becomes so strong and clear that it naturally generates thoughts, emotions, and actions that support your desired reality. You're no longer trying to change. You're simply being who you are. And who you are is naturally creating the life you want. Chapter 14. Living Through Your Future Self. The most powerful transformation technique you can master is learning to live through the perspective of your future self. The person you're becoming rather than the person you've been. This isn't about pretending or playing a role. It's about accessing the consciousness, the wisdom, and the natural patterns of the evolved version of yourself, and operating from that space right now before external evidence appears. Most people live through their past selves. They make decisions based on who they were yesterday. They interpret new situations through the lens of old experiences, and they predict their future based on their historical patterns. This keeps them trapped in repetitive cycles because they're constantly recreating their past rather than creating something new. Living through your future self means making decisions today from the perspective of who you're becoming. It means asking yourself, how would the person I'm evolving into handle this situation? What would they think about this challenge? How would they feel about this opportunity? What choice would they make? Then you act from that wisdom, even if it feels uncomfortable or unfamiliar. Your future self is not some fantasy version of yourself that bears no relationship to who you are now. Your future self is the natural evolution of your current potential. It's who you become when you remove the limitations, fears, and conditioning that currently constrain you. It's you operating at your full capacity with complete confidence in your worth and capabilities. The first step in accessing your future self is developing a clear relationship with this evolved version of yourself. This requires spending time in meditation or visualization, connecting with the consciousness of your future self and learning to recognize their perspective, their values, their decision-making process, and their natural way of being in the world. Living through your future self requires what psychologists call temporal perspective shifting, the ability to mentally time travel and view your current situation from a future vantage point. When you're facing a challenge, you step into the consciousness of your future self, who has already overcome that challenge, and ask for their perspective on the situation. This shift in temporal perspective is incredibly powerful because it immediately changes your relationship to whatever you're experiencing. Problems that seem overwhelming from your current perspective often appear manageable or even beneficial from your future self's perspective. Decisions that feel impossible become clear when viewed through the wisdom of someone who has already navigated similar choices. Your future self also has a different emotional relationship to the challenges and uncertainties you're currently facing. They know the struggle you're experiencing now is temporary and necessary for your growth. They have compassion for your current confusion or fear, but they also have confidence in your ability to navigate through it successfully. Living through your future self also means embodying their energy and presence in your daily interactions. Your future self moves through the world with a different quality of confidence, speaks with different authority, and relates to others from a place of self-assurance rather than insecurity. When you consciously embody these qualities, you begin to experience the world responding to you differently. One of the most practical applications of living through your future self is using their perspective for decision-making. When faced with choices, instead of asking, "What do I want to do?" you ask, "What would my future self do?" This subtle shift often reveals choices that serve your long-term growth, even if they're not the most comfortable options in the moment. Your future self naturally makes decisions from abundance rather than scarcity, from confidence rather than fear, from love rather than ego. They invest in long-term growth rather than short-term gratification. They choose expansion over comfort, truth over convenience, and possibility over safety. When you make decisions from this perspective, you consistently move in the direction of your highest potential. Chapter 15. The New You Begins Now. This is the moment everything shifts. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when conditions are perfect or when you feel ready. Right now, as you absorb these final words, you have everything you need to step into a completely new version of yourself. The old you, the one limited by inherited programming, constrained by automatic thinking patterns, and trapped in cycles of limitation, can end in this moment. The new you can begin right here. You now understand the most powerful truth of human existence. You become what you think. This isn't motivation or inspiration. This is the fundamental operating principle of consciousness itself. Your thoughts are not random mental events floating through your awareness. They are the architects of your reality, the programmers of your brain, and the creators of your future. Every thought you choose from this moment forward is a vote for the person you're becoming. The new you understands that transformation doesn't require permission from anyone else, perfect circumstances, or years of preparation. Transformation begins the moment you decide to think differently, to choose different thoughts, to embody a different identity. The new you knows that change isn't something that happens to you. It's something you actively create through conscious choice. The new you no longer accepts limiting thoughts as truth simply because they feel familiar. You now recognize inherited programming for what it is, outdated software that can be upgraded at any time. You understand that most of your fears, doubts, and limitations were never yours to begin with. They were absorbed from your environment before you had the wisdom to question them, and you now have the power to replace them with thoughts that serve your highest potential. The new you operates from identity rather than trying to achieve identity. Instead of saying, "I want to be confident," you simply are confident because that's who you've chosen to be. Instead of working toward success, you operate from success because that's your natural identity. This shift from seeking to being is the key that unlocks effortless transformation. The new you understands the science of neuroplasticity and uses it deliberately. You know that every thought you think, every visualization you practice, every new behavior you embody is literally rewiring your brain. You approach mental transformation with the same intentionality that an athlete brings to physical training, knowing that consistency and repetition will inevitably produce the changes you desire. The new you has mastered the art of thought selection. You observe your thinking patterns objectively and consciously choose which thoughts deserve your energy and attention. When limiting thoughts arise, you don't fight them or judge them. You simply choose something better. You've become the curator of your own consciousness, carefully selecting only thoughts that align with your desired reality. The new you lives through your future self's perspective. You make decisions today based on the wisdom of who you're becoming, rather than the limitations of who you've been. You access the confidence, clarity, and capability of your evolved self and operate from that space, knowing that external reality will eventually synchronize with your internal transformation. The new you understands that setbacks and challenges are not evidence that transformation isn't working. They're opportunities to practice operating from your new identity under pressure. You welcome these experiences as chances to prove to yourself that you've truly changed, that your new patterns are strong enough to withstand any test. The new you has activated the acceleration formula. You combine identity work, visualization, emotional supercharging, and strategic action into a comprehensive system that produces rapid change. You understand that transformation isn't about working harder, it's about working smarter. What will you choose to think? Because whatever you choose to think consistently, you will become completely. You become what you think. The new you starts now. Listen, before we wrap this up, I want you to really feel this in your bones. Everything we've talked about, every single word, it all comes down to this one moment. Right here, right now. You standing at the edge of who you've been and who you're about to become. And here's what I need you to understand with absolute certainty. You're not stuck. You never were. The cage you thought was locked, it was never even real. The limitations you believed were facts, they were just thoughts on repeat. The person you thought you were, that was just one version, one possibility, one chapter in a much bigger story. The truth is, you've always had this power. You've always been capable of this transformation. You've always had the ability to think yourself into an entirely new reality. You just didn't know it yet. But now you do. So, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Are you going to let it sit in your head like interesting information? Or are you going to let it rewire your entire existence? Are you going to keep thinking the same thoughts that built the life you have? Or are you going to start thinking the thoughts that will build the life you want? Because here's the beautiful, terrifying, absolutely liberating truth. Every single thought from this moment forward is a choice. Every single one. And those choices are adding up, multiplying, compounding into the person you're becoming. The new you isn't some distant future version waiting at the finish line. The new you is available right now. In this breath, in this thought, in this decision. So breathe it in, feel it, own it. You are not who you were yesterday. You are who you choose to be right now. You become what you think. And you, my friend, are about to become extraordinary. The new you starts now.